Hello again, and welcome back to Mapping Hour. This is episode 13. And once more, if you're without a login, you'll be able to get that at the Mapping Hour homepage by responding to the survey. We're in this section, lessons 11 through 15, where we're expanding what we had in the ArcGIS Online map viewer, scene viewer capabilities just built in with the core product. Here, we're working with these apps that extend beyond the ArcGIS Online basic capacities. We've had 2 days looking at Survey 123, really powerful field data collection app, and looking at feature layers and a feature layer view last hour. And we're moving into how do we construct an editable feature layer, and what are some of the other field data collection apps? We won't be working with Survey 123 today since we had 2 hours of it in episodes 11 and 12 and great content there. We're going to take a look at 2 other field data collection apps, Collector and QuickCapture, and then this funky little web template that allows you to do a neat trick with the data captured through these field data collection apps. So this is a speed look at some of the other apps, and we should start with Kylie. So Kylie, if you're ready, let me stop sharing and let you roll.
All right, great. All right, so as Charlie was just saying, there are 3 different data collection apps. So the last couple hours when we just talked about Survey 123 and how you can use it to bring data into your GIS, right, out in the field, adding information from scratch, right? Build your own form, you build your own structure of how you want this data to look. Well, that was only part of the story. So that is a great tool. It builds great forms, and we do see that as the most popular data collection app in the education group. However, there are 2 other apps that have a little bit more specific uses that you may find useful depending on the project you're doing. Now, think about the tool for the job. I like to think of these 3 apps when I'm looking at a project and think about kind of what the purpose of the project is. And for this, because Survey 123 is often the answer, I ignore it at first. I first start by thinking, okay, Collector is great at creating a map of an area. Now, by that, I don't mean creating a map like we did in ArcGIS Online. Creating data would be better, but I think about it, if I was going to do this project on paper in my classroom, would students be drawing a map? For example, I'm going to draw our school. I'm going to draw where the office is. I'm going to draw where classrooms are. I'm going to put certain things on the playground where they belong. Okay, well, to do that, it's really useful to me to see the other things I've drawn. I'm not going to draw one building on one paper, go to a new sheet of paper and draw the next building, because that relative placement matters, making sure I got all the buildings matters, and to see that, I want to see the whole picture of my school. So that's where Collector is really going to shine, is things where seeing the map and seeing the data you're collecting side by side on that map helps you to do your best work. Because in Collector, you'll find that the map, which we saw in Survey 123, becomes a lot more visible. And we'll look at that in a little bit. And the other kind of project I might be doing, I have to think about QuickCapture and what it's for. Now, QuickCapture is great. You can see in this image here just some big buttons, right? I see road debris. Is it a car part? Is it litter? Is it vegetation? Is it rubble? Whatever it is, there's one big button I push, and I can take a picture to go with it. And I just keep driving. I just go on to the next thing, right? I'm not spending time filling out the form like I did in Survey, and which you'll see you can actually do in Collector as well. QuickCapture is when I want to come in, mark where something is, take a picture, and get on my way. Collector is where I want to come in and think about drawing a map. And Survey is when pretty much all those other projects you can think of. Interviewing someone, maybe doing a look at different species where I want some advanced form capabilities where different questions come in, as you saw the other day. Now, something to keep in mind is that you can attach information in all 3 apps. And when I say attach, you saw that in the other slide, right, with attachment viewer. And what that is it's pictures most of the time, pretty much all the time, okay? There are other things you could attach, but for this conversation, we'll just say pictures. It may be a picture of the vegetation you saw in QuickCapture. It could be a picture of a mural that you're mapping as part of your school in Collector. And in Survey 123, it could be, a picture of that tree that you've just done a detailed analysis of, the species, the types, all of that information. So to understand our data collection apps, we need to think about what type of project we're doing, and if we're drawing the map of an area in Collector, if we're doing a really quick, just here's what it is, here's a picture, and keep going. I don't need to provide a lot of information, or the student doesn't need to provide a lot. We'll go into QuickCapture. Or most of those other projects, like we've already looked at, are going to be in Survey 123. Now, you've seen already in the last couple hours how to create surveys for Survey 123 and how to use that app. So we're going to let that rest during this episode, but we are going to dive into these other two. And one thing that you'll find common is that Collector and QuickCapture rely on a feature layer or a feature service. Now, you've heard that term, and it's a thing that you can make in ArcGIS Online. So we're going to go ahead right now, and I'm going to create one that you would be able to use in these apps. All right. And right now I'm in my Mapping Hour folder, and I don't have anything here yet, but you can see some buttons we've used before, right? We've added items, and there's this Create button. This is really powerful. This is something that when it got into ArcGIS Online, the ability to actually make your whole layer here, design it. Think about it as designing that data table, right, that we've talked about before. What columns are there or fields? You can now do that right here. So we're going to do that today. So we're going to start with click and create. And there's a lot of things you can create. In fact, you've seen some of these apps before, right? And those of them that you haven't seen before, you'll see soon. But we're going to look over here about our layers. Okay, we talked about tile layers a little bit the other day, so we've seen that before, and here's a feature layer. One of the really cool things here is that these by default are, because they're empty when you create them, are going to be editable, which means you can add data to them. That's really powerful because obviously in these field apps, you want to be able to add data, right? That's the whole point of going out and capturing data, is to add it. So let's go ahead and pick creating a feature layer. There are a bunch of templates you can see here. In fact, this may remind you of the configurable apps that we looked at before, right? There's this whole collection, and I can see damage assessments and sales and drinking water, all this great content, right? And what this is in this case is basically the header row in your Excel spreadsheet. What should the fields be? Some of them have a bit more to it and set up other parts of those. Then you'll see how we do that in a minute for our specific case. But if you know a similar project, start with one of these. One thing to keep in mind is it is going to be something you can configure after you pick it. So even if you start with one of these default example ones, you're not tied to exactly what they've done. You'll be able to add your own columns into your table. Another thing I want to point out in this conversation is these other tabs from an existing layer and from a URL. Now, we're not going to use them today, but they are very powerful. What this means, if I have a layer shared with me in my organization, and I know that I want my table to look similar to that, I can use it to create the header row of my table. I can use it to set that up. And even in some ways more powerful is from a URL. So I'm going to create a layer. And it's going to be about mapping my school. Well, if you want to go to your school and do that same project, all you would have to do is copy the URL from my layer and paste it here. And you'll get jump-started with exactly the things I set up right now. Now, I don't necessarily recommend that because one of the cool things about this series of episodes for Mapping Hour is that we're letting you try these things. So what I would recommend is maybe do what we've done today. Walk through with me on your own. Pause, play, these are videos, and create this layer. And then if you wanted to see this other process, maybe there's another layer you want to bring in that you want to put data into. Try out these other options from a URL, just so you're familiar with these different tools and how you can use them throughout the projects you do. Let's get back to that from a template. I want to just start from scratch, which means I just want to build a layer. And I can choose if I want lines, points, lines, and polygons. I often talk about polygons as areas. It's a little bit more of an accessible term to use. And sometimes with lines, I even talk about them as lengths or paths. So when I think about mapping my school, the things I want to map, obviously the buildings. There are some key features around the school that I think of kind of as points. So we'll want some points. Maybe some of the pathways. So when I think of mapping a school, it often involves all three of these types of structures: lines, points, and polygons. So I'm going to select that choice. It reminds me here of the summary, and this will be more important in some of those templates, right? Because you'll need to know a bit more about the template. In this case, I know it's the one I want, and it's gone ahead and created 3 sublayers or layers. It's just 3 different sets of data that you're going to have. So each of these will have its own table of attributes, okay? I don't like the default name, so I can click on it here and give it a new name. I think of those more as places. As I mentioned, I like paths better. And instead of polygons, we'll go with areas. Okay, so this helps me get the terms I want from my data. Now there's this checkbox here of capture GPS receiver information, and that's pretty powerful. So Joseph talked to you guys about GPS. I think that was in episode 6. And one of the things with the GPS is it has a ton of metadata. Now we've talked about metadata in here in terms of our layers, our maps. GPS metadata has things like, how accurate was my position? How sure am I about that accuracy? What was certain elevation at that time, not just the X and the Y? All kinds of information. What type of device was used to collect this information? So if you want that information as part of your data, you can check this box and Collector will automatically record it for you, which is pretty cool. In this case, I'm not going to even be using a high accuracy GPS, and this is more an activity. So I'm not worried about that kind of level of detail. At this point, I can choose what area this layer is for. Now, in this case, I want to be able to share what I do today with all of you. If you want to use this layer and just play with how you'd map your school, I want you to be able to. So even though I'm going to look at a specific school, I'm going to go ahead and leave this as the whole world so that you'll be successful no matter where your school is. All right, let's give it a name. And in this case, I'm going to be mapping Kimberly School, so I'm going to name it as that. Now, as I just said, you'll be able to use this data as well and play with it. And so it's not just going to be Kimberly School, but before you play, you're going to need to remember what it was designed for, which was Kimberly School. And the fact that you can see it means it's public. And the fact that it's public means everyone else can see it. Everyone else can edit it. So don't do your project here. Part of why I'm naming it Kimberly School is so you remember it's not for your school. Right? Feel free to play with it, but think of it as just that, a playground or a sandbox, we sometimes say. You can use it, but don't expect anything permanent. Someone else could come in and change it. Another thing to keep in mind if you do play with this or allow students to play with it, personally identifiable information. I don't want Kendall to come in and put her house on this map because the whole world has access to that. So it's something to think about, right? When you're working with your classroom, when you're sharing content, okay? So in this case, we'll go ahead, we'll do Kimberly School. We'll add a tag here, demo. We'll add in that it's episode 13. All right, and we're going to add a summary, and we'll say a map. Mapping Kimberly School. All right, and we're going to go ahead and save it in our mapping hour folder. And there we go. Now what's happening right now is that ArcGIS Online is building that for me. It's spinning up a service, which is just a technical way to say, a way to access my table on the internet. Okay, so it's setting everything up for me. It's creating it, it's hosting it, which means I don't need my own web server to provide it. My computer can turn off and everyone else can still access this data. It's in that cloud that we've heard talked about before, right? So it's spinning that up and creating it. But did I give a lot of information about what I want those table headers to be? I really didn't. All I've done is given it a name and kind of where, and my where was very general. So I'm not really done, even though this now exists as a layer. You can see right here, it is a hosted feature layer that I've made. It has its summary here. Here's its name. I can still edit these things, right? This item page is about a layer, but it's similar to the ones that we've seen for maps. Key here is this data tab. And in this case, you can even think of data as meaning the table. And this is the table I have right now. It has an object ID, which is just the unique identifier that is used so that our GIS or computer system knows what feature we're talking about, and has a photo or file. Well, that's for that attachment thing I talked about, how you can take a picture and associate it with your data. I want more than that. So I'm going to go ahead and go to a different view. Instead of looking at the table here, I'm going to look at the fields. And we've talked before, fields, columns, same thing. In this case, I'm getting a display that's a little different. These are what I think of as the header rows in Excel, right? Usually they go the other way. It looks like a table. But in here, I'm looking at information about those rows. So it's a little bit different of a display. Now I can add, right? So this is that thing I was saying. You can completely customize what you want your table to look like. And this will be what you can collect data about. So one of the things I definitely want to know is the place type. What type of place is it? So places, again, are points. And what I want to show, how about what is here? I want it to be nicer as people are filling this out. Just like you saw in Survey 123, you can put a nice name. And you can give it kind of the database name, right? This is kind of tricky. I'm going to choose an integer type here. And there's a key reason I'm doing that, and it'll make sense in a minute. So just bear with me that right now, even though I've asked a question of what is here, I've allowed them to put integers, which seems wrong, right? We spent so much time in Survey 123 saying, if they need to be entered a number, make sure it's a number field. If they, in this case, though, what is here, an integer, what is here too? That doesn't make a lot of sense right now, but it will. So just hold on. Another thing here, allow null values. Now, null means empty. So what you're saying here is when someone collects data, allow them to not answer this question. Required question. That's what this checkbox is. I definitely want them to answer what type of place it is. That's very important when you're creating your map. We'll go ahead and add that field. And you can see, here it is. We've got our new entry in our list of fields. And I'm going to go ahead and click on it because there's more I can do with it. Now, in Survey 123, we chose a single choice to provide a list of answers. And then we gave it some names, and the database actually stored strings to represent each of those answers. In our data then, when we used it later, we talked about this, right? Think about what you want to do with your data later and what you might need. Well, you ended up with strings in your database because that's how Survey 123 designs single choice. I don't always like that. I sometimes want an integer behind it. And the reason for me is sometimes I want an order in my data when I'm displaying it, say, in a dashboard, in a story map. And I want to control that order, and it may not be alphabetical. Now, sometimes it is alphabetical, but I did a map recently about favorite color. And I love to order the colors red, orange, yellow, green, right? I like my rainbow order. Well, in my dashboard, I wasn't able to show it in that order because I used Survey 123, which tied it to strings, which sorted it by name, right? So just in case here, I'm going to go ahead and I've used an integer so that when I create a list, which is the same as providing the choices of that single choice in Survey 123, I can choose integer codes and know that I'll be able to sort on that code. Now, the code you can see is the stored value. It is not what people will see as they work with it. That's going to be this display value, which is still a string. All right, so what is here? Let's give it some choices. Let's go ahead and we'll put picnic tables, and we'll give that a code of 0 because we've set integers, and I am a computer science person. I like to start with 0. That's just one of my things. I could start with 12 here. I can pick any code I want. These don't have to go in order. I can add another one. Let's go ahead and add a restroom. Because at the school, it's pretty important that students and visitors know where those are. And another one, I'm going to make sure that water fountains are nice and easy to find. Okay, and give that one a code as well. So this, similar to that single choice thing you did with survey. And then I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now you can see I have a list of values for what is here for my places. Now I'm going to go ahead and close the what is here so I can go back to all of my fields and add some more. In addition to knowing the type of place, I may want to be able to give it a name, and we can just display the same thing for that. That would definitely be a string, and let's limit it to 50 characters. I don't really need one, and if I wanted, I could provide a default, but it's hard to provide a default name. So I'll go ahead and add that field. And we're going to add one more, which is, we'll go with some place notes. We'll just display notes, and again, it's a string. Let's give them some more characters. Let's let it be empty. And this way people can add kind of whatever they want. Maybe they want to tell a little story about the place that they're adding to the map. Let's let them do that. All right, so we've set up a couple different types of points. We've allowed people to provide a name for it, some notes. You know, I could go all day here. There's all kinds of things I may think about that I want to capture data of. But as we talked about in Survey 123, I want it to be useful. I want it to be things people will actually finish filling out or fill out what's important of. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Now let's look at our paths. We're going to do very similar things here. So you're going to see very similarly, we're going to have a path type, and we're going to say what kind of path. And again, I'm going to make it an integer, and I'm going to make it required. Okay, so right now we're kind of just reviewing the things that we just did a minute ago, and you'll find this is often the case when you're setting up similar types of data, is you do similar types of things. Again, I'm going in and creating a list, and in this type, maybe we have some dirt paths around school, and also some that are paved, and we'll give those values. Okay, so you've seen a couple times now we create that list and the choices, and you'll see how those are used in collector in a minute. Go ahead and close that, and just like the other one, paths at my school don't really need names. We don't really have, you know, common names we use, so I'm just going to make sure we have some notes for it. And make that a string. It can be empty, and we'll add that field on. All right, let's go over to our areas and think about what we might want to add there. So again, we're going to have an area type because it's really nice to be able to symbolize these different things in different ways so that our map has a different look. If I didn't capture, is it a picnic table, a restroom, a water fountain, all three of those might look the same on the map. And you'll see how this gets interesting when Joseph helps us make a map to actually use to collect this data. For now, let's go ahead and we'll go with a display name here. What type of area? And we'll go with, yet again, my favorite, an integer, and require it. We'll add that field. And if I start to go a little bit fast for you here, remember you can slow it down, or you can go watch the first one where I did this, where I went a little bit slower. In this case, what type of buildings maybe would I want here? Let's go with a classroom. Let's add in, maybe the office is important. I know the play areas are very important to my children when they head to school. That's a good reminder. They do need to be unique. And let's see what else here. Let's go with other, because to my daughter, one of the most important buildings on the whole campus is that library. And she's definitely going to want to be able to map it. So let's let her do that, but I don't want to list out every type possible. I'm going to leave that there because, as you saw before, we can use another field to help capture which that other was. And in this case, let's make sure we can have an area name, right? So that my daughter can say, yeah, that's the library. I want to spend all my time there. Now, it's not required because every building may not need one. Like if I've marked it as office, that may be enough, right? So we'll make that optional. We'll add that. And then just like the others, let's have some notes so that we can get some other information. All right, I've added in a bunch of things. You've seen here how we can make a list just like in Survey 123, right? So I've created my layer. Now I'm going to go back to the overview. Because the other thing I need to make sure I do, this guy down here, right? ArcGIS Online, when I make something, only I can see it. So I'm going to go ahead and share this map. I'm going to make sure I have shared this map publicly so that you guys can play with it as well. And then to make it easy on Joseph, I'm also going to stick it in some groups that he has access to. All right, go ahead and save those changes. Great reminder. My layer is editable, and I just said share it with the entire universe. Do I really want to do that? Now, I hope that you answer no. In this case, I do, right? Because I don't know all of you, and I want you to get to play with this layer. But I wouldn't want to do this if I was truly mapping my school, because someone from another community could come change it or could come add their school, and that would make our data kind of get a little bit busy. So in this case, yes, I am fine sharing it because that's what this project is about. In general, your project won't be. So it's a great reminder to really think about who can access it. And with editable data, that becomes even more important. All right, done a lot of talking about this layer. We've got it created. Joseph, can you help us make a really good map with it?
Ooh, it would be an honor. Well, thanks, Kylie. since Kylie has made this set of attributes and the layers, I'm going to go ahead and go to the groups inside my ArcGIS Online organizational account. And since Kylie just recently checked the groups boxes to share it with the group, I should be able to go into Mapping Hour, and I should see the layer that Kylie just shared. And look, there's Kimberly School sitting right there. So let's go ahead and open that layer. And here's the metadata that's in here. It's not a whole lot, but you can see the layers on the left side there in this metadata page that Kylie created, the places, the paths, and the areas. All good so far. And up here in the upper right, we're going to open in the map viewer. Think about a big wall map that you're rolling down from the school classroom wall. That's the map, right? It has layers in it. Kylie created the layers, and we need to put those layers into a map. And the reason why is because Collector is going to look at the map. The layers are going to be inside the map. So I hope that's helpful. Let's go ahead and open it in the map viewer now. This should look familiar. Now we're inside ArcGIS Online, which we spent a lot of time in previous Mapping Hour episodes on. The first thing I want to do here is I want to go to the left side of the map. I want to go to Content and Kimberly School Places. Let's say I don't want those names. Let's say I just want to call it Places, Paths, or Areas. I could rename that here if I want to, okay? Because let's say I'm truly going to use it for Kimberly School. I already know that, and so I can just rename these if I want. So, okay, let's just go ahead and do that. Rename, it's just the triple dots, sometimes known as the ellipses over here on the left side. You'll see that a lot in the ArcGIS Online interface. Okay, so now I've got those three things renamed. And, what should we do next? Kylie kind of hinted on this as a preview of coming attractions, and that is we really do want to change the symbology, or as known in ArcGIS Online, the style. So they both mean the same thing. You're changing the symbols for your points, lines, and polygons. So let's go ahead and change the style. Remember, places are points. So let's go ahead and change the style. We're going to be able to get a symbol set, or a set of points that we can stylize or symbolize. So let's go ahead and go to, what do we have here for the, what is here is what Kylie entered. So we can go ahead and change the symbology now. Now the default here, they're okay, but we can do better. So what about this? Picnic tables. Gosh, what do we have here? We've got some choices here, but gosh, oh, look at this. I've got a whole suite of categories underneath each of which I've got a whole bunch of symbols. Now I happen to know that under government, there is a picnic table shape, and it's about 60% of the way down, as I recall. So I'm going to scroll down here. Wow, I've got all kinds of symbols. Now, is any of them correct or incorrect? Not really, but again, you want to make this amenable to when you're out there in the field collecting, you're going to want to be able to have that symbol for the exact feature that you're collecting. So under government, we've got, look at this. I've got a couple different colors. I'm going to pick this one right here, and I'm going to bump up the size. And the reason is because when you're out there on your mobile device, your phone, you want to pick symbols that are easily identifiable on, think about your small real estate that you've got on your phone. So pick oversized symbols is really the key here. So I'm going to bump it up to 30 and going ahead and saying, okay, that looks a little bit big on this map, but remember, we're going to be using a mobile device. So same way with the restroom, it puts me at government again, and then about 75% of the way down is a restroom symbol. There it is. And again, I'm going to bump it up to 30 points. Okay, that looks good. And then we've got the water fountains, sometimes known as drinking fountains. Okay, so let's go ahead and change the water fountain to, it's about 25% of the way down, and it's right over here. Here's a water fountain. Okay, and again, I'm going to bump it up to 30. Okay, very nice. Okay, great. Now, Kylie, do you want me to do anything with other?
No, since we made that required that they pick one of the types provided, it actually won't be possible to get other on this map.
Okay. So we're just going to say okay there and then done. Now, what about paths? Wouldn't it be handy in the field to be able to change the paths? And then Kylie's got it, again, very easily understood what kind of path. And okay, let's go ahead and here's what I like to think about when I go into the symbology or the style changer in ArcGIS Online. Whatever you're on right now, you get the choice of options. If you want to change what you're mapping, how you want to map it, then you go to one of these other things, and it's usually identified as select. But what it's saying is right now I'm on unique symbols, and so I'm going to get options. If I want to change it to some other way of mapping, then I'm going to get these select down here. So remember, the thing that you're on right now, go to options. Ooh, Kylie, I like this pretty well, except dirt. Okay, thinking about, again, your admonition to make these symbols kind of oversized in the field, I'm going to make it a 4-line width. It looks a little bit big here, but, and if it's dirt, I want to give it a nice sort of brownish. Okay, and then paved, maybe I want to give it a grayish color. And again, I want to bump the symbol size up to 4, and so that's good too. Okay, I'm liking that pretty well. I'm going to say done here. And then finally, ooh, how do I know how I'm doing? I can hit that legend button at any time, and now I can see that, okay, I've done the places and the paths. I haven't done areas yet, so let's go ahead and change the area, change style once again. What type of area? Okay, and again, the one that you're on right now, you go to options and say, do you like the defaults? Kylie, do you like the defaults? Should I change it to something else?
I think that'll be fine for this map.
Oh, we're just going to go with that. Remember, though, you can change this. Okay, so now let's check our legend and make sure, okay, that's looking good. Now what I'm going to do is it's a very interesting step, but it's really important when you're setting things up for collector. All right, folks, what we haven't done yet is we haven't saved our map. Remember, some tools have autosave in ArcGIS land and some don't. So you need to pay attention to that. Oh, it's on the internet, nothing will happen. No, you need to save it. So here, we're going to save as, and I'm going to give it Kimberly School Map. I know that's a bit redundant because it is a map, and when you go into content, it's going to show your layers and your map. But just as a nice reminder to me and others, I'm going to call it Kimberly School Map. Okay, forgive my big fingers here. Okay, that's looking good there. And I'm going to use that for the summary as well. Okay, I'm liking that. I'm going to save my map, and remember, you can always check that you've indeed saved it, because in the upper left, your title should be now reflective of what you've actually done. So I'm going to go ahead and share my map. I'm going to share it. Do I want to share it with everyone? Yes, I want everybody to look at this, but I'm also going to share it with the group so my colleagues here can look at it as well and use it. All right, folks, now that I've shared the map, I'm going to pass this back to Kylie because she's got a step that's really important here as you set this up to use with Collector. Over to you, Kylie.
Great, thanks, Joseph. All right, so we're back on my screen, and I'm going to come on in here to that same group that Joseph just shared the map with, and you can see the map here. And I'm going to go ahead and open that so that I can check out this map he made for me. All right, I want to check out that legend. Okay, that looks great. Now there's one thing in Collector that it requires in order to show you a really nice display of choosing what you want to collect. It relies on this thing called templates. Now, yes, the word template, again, here used a little bit differently. These are feature templates or different settings to use for a feature. And what it's going to do is let us, in Collector, be prompted, collect a picnic table, a restroom, collect a water fountain, instead of collect a point and then, or collect a place and then saying what type it is after. Okay, so now to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here to edit, and I can see all of these feature types, right? Now I'm going to hit manage because every now and then Collector likes you to have actually clicked that button and click save. This is actually recording what that template is. In this case, I'm leaving it just as the type. But you can see here, you can also add different properties, rename these templates, change them about. This is all I need. I just want to make sure it has some good templates. So I'm just going to click through and save, making sure I get all of these defined for my map. All right, I don't want to forget those areas, so we'll save those as well. All right, I'm going to change over now to my mobile device. And for those of you who saw the last hour, you've seen this before. So I'm using a screen sharing program called a Power Mirror so that you can see my device on the screen. Now, it does have this watermark, which may be a little bit in the way in some of these, but don't worry about it. That's not there when you're actually on the device. That's just because of the screen sharing technology I'm using. So I'm going to choose to open Collector. So now I'm working on my mobile app, okay? And I'm opening this app, and it remembers who I was. And in fact, it's remembering the last map I used. But that may not be the one I want. That was when I was playing with my own map. And in this case, I want the map that Joseph just shared with me. So I'm going to come in here. I know it was shared with a group, and I remember working with this group, so I'm going to open it up. And you can see his map, the Kimberly School map. So in Collector, I can tap on that map to open it. All right, you're now seeing where I am, but that's not actually where I'm collecting today. So I'm going to go ahead and find the school, which is one of our neighborhood schools here. Now, there's another way I can find it, which is searching for it, but I happen to know how to get to this school really well, so I can see it right here. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is look at this data and think about, I'm not really sure that's the right look for this because I want to build a map of the school and I can see the kind of the blocks and I know where the school is, but someone else looking at this might not recognize it. Now, if I go in here to the overflow, base map. In this case, I don't have that icon that we've looked for in the past, but it's the same thing and I can choose a base map. And I have all these choices available to me. And I'm going to go with imagery because as I've talked about before, I find that resonates well with children to be able to really see the place that they're looking at. And you can see here's the school. So I'm actually going to do some of this just on my device. So you'll be able to see it, but that hand isn't actually where I'm touching the screen. All right, so here we are looking at the school. And the first thing I want to do is add some of these points we've talked about so I can actually start mapping my school. Now, Collector by default is going to use your location. As you saw when we opened this map, it took us over to where I am. It wasn't showing this location. But there's a way to say, no, really, I want to use a different location. If I was to use that nice blue plus button you can see down in the corner, I'm going to show it right here, that's going to use my location. So in general, if I was really doing this, I'd be walking around at the school and using that to capture these locations. Since I'm not there, what I can do instead, like here's the office, I can tap and hold. You can see a magnifier comes up and I can place the point right where I want it and a pin drops. And you can see some information about it. So it's giving some coordinates and information. Collect here. Collecting some new data. So I'm going to tap that. And in this case, that's the office. So I actually would want to use an area for that. And I can go ahead and say, hey, here's an area. Now what I'm going to do is use the map. And so I'm going to go back on my device, just again, because using the map is a bit finicky on the screen sharing software. And I can zoom in and I can see where that office is. And I, probably shouldn't have placed the first point in the middle. So I can instead say, you know what, let's use that. And I can go over here and update that point. And now I can just tap right over to here, pan the map, add a point. Right there. And we're going to say add point, go to the next corner, add point, go to the next corner, add point. At this point, I'm done, unless I also want to add a photo. You can see I have some buttons there for taking a photo, and I can go ahead and do that. And since I'm at home, I'll just go ahead and fun picture of my screen and my screen and my screen, right? And we'll go ahead and we'll use that as our picture for today. You can see it show up, and then I can go ahead and submit this feature, and it's actually adding it to the map. Now, the cool thing is, since I am online right now, if I have 4 students outside mapping this together, all of them see the office is now captured. They won't all need to collect it, so that shows up for them. A couple other things I'm just going to speak to here because it's hard to show without being able to use location. These mobile apps are really tied to the devices. They want to take advantage of what the device is bringing to the picture, which is knowing my location, having that camera, those kinds of things. And since I'm using Collector, I could even have students go and walk the edges of the building and use something called streaming to capture its location that way. I could, for example, at Kimberly, there's a track. I could go have the students walk that as one of the paths, create a line that actually traces it. What's cool there is your line, you can see with the office information I still have showing on the screen here, I can see the area of it. So if I was to capture that line, it would give us the length of the track. So when I'm choosing if something's a point, a line, an area, part of that choice is do I maybe want some measurements about it? And what might those measurements be? All right, so collector, I'm not going to go too much farther in here. We have some great resources that are going to take you through doing some of your own data collection in this app. Now, one cool thing in collector, if you don't have an account, you don't even need to sign in to play with some maps and try the experience. So I'm going to let you guys do that on your own. So that's collector. That's the keys here. And I'm going to go ahead now and turn it over to Tom so he can take us through the other app that we mentioned earlier, which is QuickCapture.
Thanks, Kylie. Charlie, you want to kick us off into our next app?
Sure. I'm going to start with a blog. I got to work with QuickCapture, and last summer, the area that I live in was overrun with scooters, and they were everywhere, and I was moving them out of the way on my morning walks, and I was getting a little tired of it, and I thought, ooh, this is a perfect opportunity for me to map these scooters and see where they are. So I created, using QuickCapture, a little app that I could use just as I'm walking in the morning. I'm out and I see a scooter, it's in the path, I just want to record it once. Or if it's in a good place, I say, hey, I want to good on you, whoever you were that parked it there. So I created a display that shows on the left side pain and on the right side joy. And in the top row, it's scooters. Second row is bicycles. Third row is anything else that might be human oriented. And the last row, anything that might be nature oriented. 95% of my entries were scooter pain, and there was an occasional scooter joy, and I think I had one or two bicycle entries in there. But that was the process that I did as a finished product working with QuickCapture. Now, I had to use the process that Kylie demonstrated about creating a feature service, and then I had to design the panel that I was going to be working with and use the designer. So, Tom, can you take us through that process?
Well, we can certainly try. There we go. And much like Kylie began the collector session, we need to start with QuickCapture by creating a feature layer that we can place some data into. Now, you may recall from when Kylie walked us through this, there are a variety of templates to choose from. We're going to keep this very simple. I've just pressed build a layer over on the left, and we're not going to do lines. We're not going to do areas. We're just going to do a point layer and keep this very simple. We'll hit create. I'm not going to change any of the defaults here, so we'll have a point layer. We're not going to capture that extra metadata or detailed data from the GPS. Like Kylie's project, that's more information than we need. We're going to leave our extent at a national scope, in part because in a moment I'm going to ask my colleagues here to all contribute data. And you may not know it, but we're all in different locations. So here I'm going to name my new feature layer, and we're going to call it Faces and Feet. Now, this is going to be kind of a fun little project, and we're going to give it Faces and Feet. Filling out some of our metadata for the layer, and Faces and Feet. And I'm going to go ahead and save it in one of my subfolders in my content. So I'm going to go ahead and hit done. And right now, ArcGIS Online is creating that feature layer and saving it into my organization account. And here's my feature layer. It's coming up. Okay. So this is pretty much an empty feature layer at this point. So we need to do two key things here before we move over into our editing tools. First off, what you may have noticed is with QuickCapture, you're basically collecting data for one field or one attribute. So like with Charlie's observational data, his morning walk data, all of that data flowed into a single field. So as Kylie did before, the data tab shows us a table view by default. We're going to go over to fields, and we're just going to create a new field. And this field is going to hold our faces or feet data. And I'm going to streamline my labels just a little bit here and call them face, feet. And in our case, we're going to go ahead and stay with string. We could leave this at 256 characters, but frankly, we just don't need to take up the space inside of the table. So I'm going to streamline it. We are going to go ahead and allow nulls because we're not that concerned about it. So I've added a new field now to our feature layer. I'm going to pop back over here to overview. And the last thing I want to do while I'm here is actually go here down the right side. And for us, I'm going to go ahead and share this feature layer with the project and with the mapping hour organization. Okay. I'm going to hit OK. We'll press this and save it. So now, at least, my 4 colleagues can all see the feature layer, although there's no data in it yet. Okay. So now I'm going to go over to the QuickCapture design tool, and this is at quickcapture.arcgis.com. And I've already got one project in here that I was working on this morning. It's called Flowers. But what I really want to do for faces and feet is just create a new project. So I've hit the new project button, and it's going to say, okay, which feature layer do you want to base the project on? So I'm going to select faces and feet. It puts a little checkbox in there, and the panel at the bottom pops up, and I've got to hit next. And it's going to ask for a little bit of metadata, and it plugs in some of it based on that feature layer. And it's going to say, who do you want to contact in case of a problem, and then where do you want to put it? And I'll tell you, just to kind of keep things neat, I'm going to put it right into my QuickCapture folder, and I'm going to hit create. This is going to kind of create the skeleton for that project, that QuickCapture project. So you'll notice, much like Charlie's screenshot before, we now see an example of, in this case, an iPhone 6, 7, or 8 with one sample button here. So if I click on the button, I activate it. And when I activate it, all kinds of things come alive on the right side of the screen. You'll notice I've got an appearance tab and I've got a data tab. These are both important and they both contain different things. So as I look down my label, this is a label for the button. I'm going to set it to face, and I can set an image for the face. Whoops, actually I just removed that one. I'm going to go ahead and add one, and I think I might have a face image. Let's try this one. And we can set our button sizes and shapes, our corner edging. We can also set the color of the buttons. So we can have a little bit of fun in designing what this interface looks like. We can set whether or not we want a border on the button. Now I'm going to go over to my data tab, and this is where some really interesting things can happen. I can select single or streaming point. Today we're going to keep it simple. We're going to single point it. I definitely want to turn on my photo, and I do want to require it. Lastly, an important bit here is we want, in this very bottom box, to write the word face. This is the bit of data that's written into the feature layer that will tell this record that this photograph should be a face. Okay? That's the only place that that data is logged. So this button's looking okay. It's not terribly fancy. It's got a little face on it. That's good. It's kind of hard to see, but that's okay. Now, I've got a little clone button up here next to the trash can. I'm going to hit the clone button, and you'll notice now I've got a face copy. Well, we obviously don't need 2 face buttons, but we do need a feet button. And we're going to remove the little icon that's there, and I've got some feet here that we're going to put on. That looks a little bit better than the face does. I'm going to leave the styling alone, but maybe I'll change the color up a little bit just so it looks a little different on screen. Now, these are big buttons. They're ideal if you're going outside and the visibility on your phone is difficult to see because it's bright, or because maybe you have some gloves on, or maybe you're like me and you're just not that skilled at using a phone when you're outside. So the interface for QuickCapture is ideal for being able to capture little bits of data with a photograph in a very quick fashion. So as before, I wanted to change my capture field, change that attribute, and I'm going to move it over to feet. Okay, so now we have one button for face, one button for feet. I'm going to save my work where I am. I could change my point layer label up here. You'll notice that you can also change this and says, what are you picturing? And just save that. That'll drop in there. That looks good. So last thing I want to do here at the moment is make sure I'm sharing it. And in this case, I'm going to share this with our organization. This is the organization used in the mapping hour. And then, of course, I'm going to also share it in the mapping hour group. Okay. And then I'm going to try to save changes. Voila, that works. So if my colleagues will now get their cell phones ready, what we're going to try to do is all take some sample data from our own locations. That's not what I wanted to do. We'll save it again, and my colleagues are already logged into their QuickCapture applications on their phone. And what I want to do here is I'm going to stop sharing from my desktop, and I'm going to try to share from my smartphone. We're going to try and see how this works. So now you're looking at my phone, and I'm going to bounce over to my QuickCapture. QuickCapture is an app that you can download for your phone. Now you'll see that I've already got my flowers app in here, but I don't see my faces and feet app. So I've got this little plus sign in the lower right corner where I'll hit, where I am going to hit the plus sign. And in this case, you'll notice that I can browse or scan. And I think I will browse. And you'll notice that in my list here, that project appears faces and feet. It's on the top of my list. And if I go to the right side of that box, I've got a little download arrow. So I can hit the download button. And what happens, QuickCapture has to download that template data. And if I click on it, once it's downloaded, I will get my project buttons. So this QuickCapture app should be ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and try to take a sample data point, and I'm going to press the feet button, and hopefully my colleagues are also, this works. I'm going to take a picture of my feet in my dark office here, and then I'm going to hit the send button. And then I've got a, I think I took it backwards. Now I'm going to take a picture of my face. And let's see, I'm pretty sure I just put my face in my feet box and vice versa. That's okay. All right, so that is how we can collect data and share it inside of QuickCapture. Now I'm going to try to release my iPhone share here. And at this point, hopefully, Charlie is ready to show us what we might be able to do with that data. Charlie?
Cool. Here, I've got the K-12 org, and I'm going into my groups, and I've gone into the mapping hour group, and I see the faces and feet. Here's the feature service. So what I can do is to say, I want to open that feature service in Map Viewer. And the reason that I want to open this in Map Viewer, hey, I see some that are in the Los Angeles area, some in the Denver area, some in the Kansas City area, and some in the DC area. We were successful. What I want to do is to take a look at the pictures here. Save this map. I'm going to save the map. So this is going to be the faces and feet map, faces and feet, and that's going to go into my folder there. I'm going to go ahead and say save it. So now I can share it. And this is where I can say, I want to share it with the org. Maybe that's a better way to do that. I'll create a web app. And let me think, I'm going to look for the attachment viewer. Well, here it is right here. I could also, if I just said, I know it's the attachment, okay, yep, there's the attachment viewer. I can click on that and say, let me create a web app. So this is now going to be my faces and feet app, and done. And this is a very simple app. that says you don't have to do a lot of configuring. It's going to say, all right, it's going to give me a panel here, and it's going to go to one of the first dots that it gets. And so I'm looking at this and thinking, yep, I want all of this, title my app, onboarding, button text. I don't even know that I need any of these elements here. If I go to the options, I think I can just pass on all of these. Maybe I can enable the feature selection. I'm going to save that. And let's launch this and see what we get. So if I look and see, I'm going to click on this guy here in the middle, and I see I'm in location number 10 of 11. Oh, look at that. I've got some feet. And wait a minute, that's showing me in the, ooh, we got some feet there. Look at that. And we got a pretty interesting face there. There's me, and there's my shoe. I only gave you one of my feet. So this is a way that we can take a look at the characteristics. We can see, wow, there's Kylie's buddy. This is how we can take a look at the characteristics that are in the feature service that have been created inside of any of our feature layers that have been editable and had attachments available to them. This is a really cool little extension of the field data collection apps that are designed to give people the capacity to explore all of these data sets. This worked great, gang. So look at that. What we've done was to work on creating an editable feature layer. Last couple of times we worked with Survey 123, and here we were working with Collector and QuickCapture, and there you just saw the attachment viewer. Some of the concepts and skills, remember, it's always about design for what the project is. Think about that end product and kind of work backwards. And as you're thinking about the topic, go for the best tool for the job. Again, Survey 123 is the one that is most often used in education projects that we're familiar with, and that's really a form-centric kind of application. Collector is really heavily used in the professional end of life, and it's really more map-centric, as you saw with Kylie building some data on that device. And QuickCapture for these one-button jobs is really cool. The attachment viewer, again, that's a web app template that you'll find by sharing a map to get fast access to those attachments. We've got some great resources here. Over on the right-hand side first, you'll see some of the elements that you can find in the Mapping Hour website, and then some of the great places to see additional kinds of stuff. And as you design some of your projects, share them inside the Geo projects, come back over on the left side, and what you're going to see on the left is at the top, a quick look at the set of applications that are the field apps that are inside of the Esri ArcGIS platform of applications there. Then you'll see the attachment viewer template. Then you'll see two blogs from Kylie. First, where you can go ahead and try Collector. I don't think you even need to be logged in order to do that. And then second, to be able to make your first Collector map. Then you can take a look at a Charlie blog there. That's the address to the blog that I was showing. And then there's a great blog by Bernie that is about getting started and working with QuickCapture. So you got last time you got some Survey 123. Here you got some QuickCapture and Collector. You've got a bunch over in the zones by our friends, and you've got a lot of content that you can go off and explore. Practice. Don't just watch, try it out. That's it for today. Thanks, everybody.